probably heard horror stories before, but not like these. Because tonight, you're not just listening, you're stepping inside them. Welcome to Scary Dark Narrations, where shadows breathe and the truth is far more terrifying than fiction. This isn't just another campfire story, these are real accounts of people who vanished, screamed, or were never quite the same again. Their words were pulled from diaries, police logs, and online confessions, each one a chilling reminder that the things we fear in the dark sometimes fear us back. In this video's 7 Most Disturbing True Horror Stories compilation, you'll hear about the moments when ordinary nights turned into nightmares. A trucker who picked up something not quite human on a deserted highway, a family who moved into their dream home and found out it wasn't empty, and a hiker who followed a trail that no longer exists on any map. They all swore what they saw was real. They all tried to warn others. And now, it's your turn to listen. If you're alone right now, maybe, turn on another light, because by the time this video ends, you'll start wondering what's hiding just outside your window, and whether it's listening to. So settle in, turn the volume up, and prepare yourself for what's coming next. You're watching Scary Dark Narrations, and this is 7 Most Disturbing True Horror Stories compilation. The air that afternoon felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath. Snowflakes drifted down in thick silence as I stepped out of the car, my boots sinking into the soft white powder. Connecticut winters always looked peaceful from a distance, but up close there was something unnatural about how quiet everything became when it snowed. My aunt's house stood alone at the edge of a vast forest, its windows fogged and glowing faintly yellow through the storm. I remember thinking it looked safe, warm, like a postcard. I couldn't have been more wrong. My mom had warned me before the trip, don't go into the woods behind their house. You'll get lost. I promised I wouldn't, but promises mean nothing when you're 12 and chasing adventure. Inside, my cousins Ryan and Brandon greeted me with rough laughter and a snowball to the chest. We played games, drank cocoa, and watched the snowfall thicken until the world beyond the windows vanished into white. By morning, the forest looked like a sleeping beast under a sheet of snow. Every branch bowed low, every shadow stretched too long. Around noon, Ryan tossed me a pair of boots and said, "Let's go see how deep it got." We trudged through the yard, throwing snowballs and laughing until our faces burned red. Then Brandon pointed toward the woods. "Come on," he said. "Hot." Something inside me hesitated. My mom's warning whispered in my mind. Curiosity. Tepid, innocent curiosity. 1. Crossed the fence and stepped into the forest. The air changed immediately. It was colder, sharper, and the silence was absolute. Even our laughter died as our boots sank into the powder. The snow muffled everything. Only the faint crunch beneath our feet kept me from believing time had stopped. Then we froze. The sound sliced through the air like a knife. It was the scream of a young girl, shrill and panicked, coming from somewhere ahead. I looked at Ryan. His face was pale under his hat. "Probably nothing," he muttered. But when we started walking again, the same scream came again. Same tone, same pitch. Identically, it had been replayed. A shiver crawled up my spine. Brandon tried to act tough, but I saw his hand tremble on his coat zipper. "There's nothing to worry about," he said. Then it came again, louder, closer. That broke us. We turned and ran. The snow clawed at our legs. Branches snapped against our jackets, and cold air burned our lungs. My heart hammered so loud I thought it would echo off the trees. When we finally burst from the forest and stumbled into the yard, the world felt too bright, to open. I almost didn't hear the banging over the sound of my own heartbeat. It came from the old shed near the fence. Ryan, being the oldest, stepped closer and peered inside. The door was cracked open, the latch hanging broken. Side empty shelves. Tools missing. He shut it fast. No one said it, but we all thought the same thing. Someone had been there. He didn't tell the adults. Not yet. Fear of getting in trouble outweighed fear of whatever had screamed out there. So, we stayed quiet. That night, snow whispered against the windows. I lay in the guest room upstairs, staring at the ceiling. Sometime past midnight. Tap, tap. It was slow, deliberate, like fingers brushing snow aside. My room was on the second floor. There shouldn't have been anything outside. I held my breath, listening. The tapping stopped, then came again, faster this time. I wanted to call for my aunt, but my throat locked up. Then, silence swallowed everything. Morning came pale and gray. I hadn't slept. My cousins were waiting in the kitchen, faces drawn, pretending everything was normal. We shoveled the driveway together, the scrape of metal on ice the only sound. The forest loomed behind the house, blank and endless. When we started a quick football game in the yard, it came again. We froze mid-throw. The scream was closer than before, slicing through the cold like a blade. Brandon bolted into the garage, came back gripping a baseball bat. Ryan grabbed a flashlight even though it was daytime. I snatched up a heavy stick, my hands shaking. We followed the sound along the fence toward the far side of the yard. Beneath a clump of bushes half buried in snow, we found a small battery radio. The volume dial was twisted to max, and the noise we heard was looping. It's the same scream, recorded, repeating endlessly. Relief hit me first. It was just a prank. That's what I told myself. But then I saw the footprints, large, boot-shaped prints leading away from the bushes and into the trees. Ah! Before we could even speak, a man stepped out from behind a pine tree. His coat was black, his hat pulled low, and his cheeks were red from the cold. He smiled. "Hey kids," he said softly. "Come with me. I have something to show you." Ryan shouted back, "No." The man didn't move for a moment. Then his smile widened, stretching too far, too forced, like he'd practiced it in a mirror. Then he charged. We ran. The snow felt endless beneath our feet. Ryan's flashlight swung wildly. The man slipped on an icy patch, his body twisting, arms flailing as he hit the ground. His teeth bared in frustration as we reached the back door. We slammed it shut and locked it. Our aunt rushed in, eyes wide, asking what happened. The story spilled out between gasps, the scream, the shed, the tapping, the radio, the man. Her face turned white. Within minutes, police cars rolled up, red and blue lights painting the snow. Officers spread out across the property. One found footprints leading toward the road. Not long after, they caught him still carrying a hammer and a cordless drill under his coat. His name was Carl, my aunt's ex-boyfriend. He'd moved away years ago, but he'd come back with a plan. Scare us, draw us out, and use us to lure her. The scream recording, the shed break-in, the tapping, everything had been staged. He wanted her to think he could hurt us if she didn't come back to him. The snow had slowed him down, maybe even saved our lives. I'll never forget his face when he slipped, how his grin vanished, replaced by something almost animal. That night, we slept together in the living room with the TV on. The glow of the screen made the windows look like dark mirrors. Kept glancing at them, half expecting to see that smile staring back from the snow. Outside, the storm buried the last of the footprints. The radio was gone, taken as evidence. But sometimes, just before I fall asleep, I swear I can still hear it. Would you dare go back into those woods? It was a little after 1 in the morning, though it felt later, like the night itself had stretched to see what I would do next. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator down the hall. I remember clutching my flashlight under the covers, pretending to read the same comic page again and again. My mom was on the night shift at the hospital. My 2 sisters were asleep in their rooms. I was 8 years old, and the one who knew the alarm code. Our neighborhood had been tense that week. Someone said they heard gunshots near the park, and Mom had cranked the security system to its highest setting before leaving. I thought the house was safe, that the glowing keypad by the door was magic, but when the alarm screamed through the silence, that illusion shattered. It wasn't just loud, it hurt. The siren drilled into my chest and made the walls quiver. I threw the blanket aside and stumbled into the hallway. Lena and Caleb burst out of their rooms at the same time, eyes wide, hair tangled, both yelling my name. "Code," Lena's voice barely cut through the blare. My heart thumped so hard I could barely see straight, but my fingers moved anyway. The keypad blinked red as I punched in Mom's 4 digits. For a moment, I thought it wouldn't work. Then silence. I stood frozen, the air vibrating with the echo of what had just happened. Kayla's voice came out in a shaky whisper. "Did you open anything?" I shook my head. "No, nothing." We checked the living room, the back door, the windows. Everything was locked, curtains unmoved. The only place we didn't check was the garage. Mom always called that the weak spot. It led straight to the backyard and the alley behind the house. I told myself it was a glitch. Maybe a branch brushed a sensor or a loose wire. Then, outside, came a crack. Sharp. Quick. Lena froze. Kayla's hand found mine. We waited, hearts sinking with the hum of the night. Then, as if mocking us, the alarm screamed again. This time, it felt personal. I couldn't move. My body locked up, every nerve turned to ice. Lena grabbed my arm, dragging me toward the keypad as Kayla pushed from behind. The siren blared in our ears until my trembling fingers somehow hit the code again. Silence returned, but it was wrong this time. It listened back. We stood in the hall, surrounded by shadows that suddenly felt too thick, too heavy. None of us spoke. Then Lena said what we were all thinking. Master bedroom. Lock it. We ran. Mom's bedroom door clicked shut behind us, the lock sliding home like a heartbeat we could control. Inside, the air smelled faintly of her lavender lotion, but underneath was something else. Metallic. Cold. Kayla grabbed a lamp from the dresser, holding it like a weapon. Lena took Mom's softball bat from under the bed. I reached for a heavy perfume bottle that felt like a rock in my palm. We sat on the carpet, backs against the wall, listening. Every creak, every sigh of wind sounded like a footstep. I couldn't stop staring at the gap beneath the door, half expecting to see a shadow slide across the strip of light from the hallway. Minutes stretched, pulling thin. Time warped. My eyes burned. Then a soft click. None of us moved. The sound didn't come from our door, it came from somewhere deeper in the house. We waited, breath held, hearts trying not to be heard. Then, nothing. Just silence again, the kind that swallows everything. Then silence swallowed everything. When I woke again, the room was dim gray. I must have drifted off, sitting upright, the perfume bottle still clenched in my hand. The alarm hadn't gone off again, but the stillness outside was too complete, like the world was holding its breath. Birds began to chirp faintly through the early light. Lena unlocked the door, her movement slow, deliberate. The hallway light flickered when we stepped out, but everything looked untouched. The picture frames were straight, the curtains still hung still. Only the air felt disturbed. We moved together, quiet as ghosts, checking every room. The windows were sealed tight, every door bolted. But when we reached the garage, my stomach twisted. The door handle felt cold. Too cold. I turned it slowly, opening just a crack. The single bulb inside flickered on, casting long, trembling shadows over stacks of boxes and Mom's old bike. The air smelled faintly like rain, though it hadn't rained in days. The big garage door was shut, the bar across it still in place. But something felt wrong. The walls seemed to hold a breath, like the space itself remembered someone standing there, watching. We didn't step inside. None of us wanted to look too closely. We backed away, shut the door, and called Mom at the hospital. Her voice stayed calm, but I heard the edge in it. She said she'd check the security logs when she got home. She arrived after sunrise, still in scrubs, eyes scanning everything. The yard was clear. No footprints. The backyard gate was locked, its key still on her ring. But when she pulled the alarm system's memory log, her face went pale. 2 triggers, both from the garage side door, within 3 minutes of each other. Someone had tried twice. The security company blamed a sensor glitch. Mom showed them the faint scratches around the outside knob, fine curved lines, like something metallic had tried and failed to twist it open. We replaced the lock that afternoon, but the damage was already done. That night, none of us slept. Lena started keeping a knife under her pillow. Kayla wore her headphones to drown out the world. Me. I stayed awake, staring at my bedroom ceiling, counting seconds between each creak in the house. Even Mom started double-locking the doors, something she never used to do. It was as if the house had become aware of us, or worse, as if something outside had learned our names. Weeks passed, then months. Nothing else happened. But fear doesn't just fade, it waits. Mom called it a fresh start. But every time we drove by the old place, I found myself looking at that same garage door. Someone had painted over the wood, but the handle was still the same. I knew those scratches were beneath the paint, sealed but not gone. Sometimes I dream about that night. The alarm, the silence, the faint metallic click of the knob. In the dream, I never wake up in the new house. I'm still 8 years old, sitting in the dark with a flashlight, waiting for the siren to start again, and every time it does, I can hear it crying from the garage. Would you dare return to that house? The night it happened still echoes in my dreams, the sound of glass shattering, the metallic scent of blood mixing with fear. But that night wasn't where it started. It began months earlier, in November 2017, when I transferred to the Smith School in New York City. 50 kids in total, small enough that everyone knew everyone. The building smelled faintly of cleaning supplies and old linoleum, its flickering fluorescent lights making even the daylight feel gray. I'd switched schools because my last one was too fast, too advanced. I needed somewhere quieter, a reset button. Smith used to be a school for kids with criminal records. But now, it was mostly kids with behavioral needs. That label sounded harmless enough, till I met Kyle. Kyle Fernandez. He was charming in that dangerous kind of way. Half smile, hooded eyes, the smell of weed always clinging to his clothes. People said he got kicked out of his last school for selling to classmates. I should have listened.
Oh.
But when you're 17 and someone makes you feel like the only person who matters, you ignore the warning signs. He wasn't all bad at first. For the first few months, he'd walk me home, hold my hand, and talk about getting out of this city someday. His laugh was contagious, reckless, but alive. But then, I started noticing things. A twitch in his jaw when I mentioned other people. The way his pupils stayed wide, even in sunlight. Still, I told myself he loved me, that it was just the drugs, that it wasn't really him. One night in July 2018, he came over. My mom was working late again. She always did. Kyle sat cross-legged on my bed, flipping through my playlist while I scrolled through my phone. Then my phone buzzed. Over and over, Liam. My friend from my old school, the only person who still checked in. He'd sent me memes, dumb ones, the kind that make you snort unexpectedly. Kyle's voice cut through my laughter. Who's texting you? Just Liam, I said, smiling, trying to brush it off. He stared at me, eyes narrowing. Let me see. My stomach turned cold. Kyle, it's nothing, let me see. When I said no, something inside him snapped. It wasn't a slow build, it was instant volcanic. His hand moved faster than I could process, grabbing my phone and hurling it against the wall. The tiny shards exploded across the room like frozen sparks. My lamp toppled, the air filled with that sharp electric smell of broken plastic. I just stood there, shaking, every sound suddenly too loud, my own breathing. The hum of the ceiling fan, the distant wail of a siren outside. Before I could speak, his hand clamped around my arm. His eyes, those same soft brown eyes I'd once trusted, were black now, bottomless. He picked up a shard of glass from the floor. Kyle, don't. He drove it into my arm. For a split second, the world blurred into static. Heat, pain, disbelief, all tangled together. I screamed high and raw as he staggered back, glass trembling in his hand. Are you happy now? He shouted, voice cracking, before storming out the door. Then silence swallowed everything. I remember washing the wound under the faucet, my hands trembling so hard I could barely turn the handle. Blood spiraled down the drain, pink ribbons vanishing into the pipes. I bandaged it with trembling fingers, blocking him on everything: phone, socials, life. He never came back, not once. And for years I convinced myself it was over, that the past couldn't hurt me anymore. But the past has a way of waiting, quiet, patient, just behind the glass. It was August 2023 when the phone rang again. The number was unfamiliar, a New York area code, but not one I recognized. I was at work halfway through my shift when I picked it up. Hello, a woman's voice, professional, calm. Is this my name? Yes, I said, hesitating. This is the 42nd Street, New York Presbyterian Hospital. Your mother's been in an accident. My mind emptied. The only thing I could hear was the ringing in my ears, like the world had gone underwater. The woman said something about a drunk driver, multiple victims, critical condition. I didn't even hang up, just ran. The city blurred past. Horns, lights, people, all meaningless noise. By the time I reached the hospital, my chest ached from running, my hands still shaking as I pushed open the door. I found her in room 214, tubes everywhere, machines whispering life into her body. Her skin looked gray, almost translucent, as if the world had already started to let go. I sat beside her and cried until my throat burned. A nurse entered quietly. "You're her daughter?" "Yes. What?" "What happened?" She sighed, her expression tightening. "A man stole a car while intoxicated. Wrong way driver. He hit several people on the sidewalk, your mother among them." My pulse stuttered. "Did they find him?" "Not yet, but they will." They did. The next day, when they told me his name, I thought it was a mistake. Kyle Fernandez. The words didn't make sense at first, like static. Then it hit hard, like that shard of glass all over again. He'd done it. He'd found me, in the worst way possible. The one person I thought I'd escaped was now responsible for the thing that destroyed my life. Mom woke up the following morning, disoriented, terrified. She couldn't move her legs. The doctor explained in quiet tones what had happened. The spinal damage, the paralysis, would never walk again. I couldn't even process it. I just stared at her hands, trembling, reaching for me, while the monitor beeped in rhythm with my racing heart. When the story hit the news, people called it a terror incident. 7 victims, bodies flung like dominoes. But for me, it wasn't random. It was personal. I wrote to the court. Every word felt like reopening an old wound, describing that night, the blood, the glass, the scream. When they read it aloud in court, another woman stood up. She said Kyle had hurt her too. Different year, same rage. We locked eyes for a moment, both of us shaking. 2 survivors, bound by the same scar. When the judge read the sentence, 2.5 years, the room felt colder. 2.5 years for destroying 7 lives. 2.5 years for the sound that still wakes me at night, the shatter that never stops echoing. I visit Mom every Sunday. Her wheelchair creaks softly across the floor. She says she forgives him. Can't. Sometimes, late at night, I hear it again. That crack. The sound of glass against plaster. When I look around, everything's intact. Still, I can't shake the feeling that Kyle isn't behind bars anymore. That somehow the glass between us has thinned again. Would you dare return to that night and listen closely to what still whispers through the shattered glass? The hum of the highway faded behind me as I turned into the car wash lot. The air was still heavy with June heat, clinging to my skin like static. 4 concrete bays stood under buzzing yellow bulbs, their glow slicing through the darkness in weak, uneven patches. The soap machines were faded and rusted, and the Coke machine in the corner looked like it hadn't worked since the 90s. The place smelled of wet cement and detergent, a scent I usually found oddly comforting. But that night, something felt wrong. I normally washed my truck during the day, when people were around, when the town still felt alive. But that evening, every bay had been full, so I waited, killed some time, and came back after dark. The roads were empty when I pulled in at 9:30. Only one other car sat near the vacuums, an old dusty sedan, headlights off. As I stepped out, I noticed a man standing by one of the vacuum posts about 20 yards away. Baggy jeans. Stained t-shirt, barefoot I think. He didn't move. Just stood there, his face hidden in the half-shadow, staring at the pavement. At first, I didn't pay him much mind. People sometimes cut through the car wash on their way to the all-night gas station across the street. Happens all the time in small towns. I slid a handful of quarters into the slot, grabbed the pressure wand, and squeezed. The water exploded out with a hiss, echoing off the walls, so loud it drowned out everything, even my own thoughts. Steam curled up around my legs as I worked, the spray reflecting that pale yellow light. But then, a metallic thump broke through the noise. I let off the trigger. That's when I saw him. The man was smashing his forehead against the metal housing of the vacuum, over and over, slow mechanical, like he couldn't feel it. A dark stain began to spread where his skin met steel. I froze, half expecting him to collapse, but he just kept going, steady as a metronome. My first thought was drugs. Happens a lot around here. If you don't mess with them, they usually leave you alone. I see. So I kept washing, pretending not to see, heart drumming against my ribs. Then, headlights washed across the lot. An old red Chevy pickup rolled in, dented and rattling like a bag of bolts. The man stopped hitting his head, turned toward the truck, his movements oddly slow, and climbed into the passenger side. The driver, just a vague shadow behind the dirty windshield, revved the engine. The truck spun its tires, throwing dust, and sped off toward the road. Relief hit me like cool air. I even laughed a little. Problem gone. I finished rinsing, tossed the nozzle back, and climbed into my truck. But as I pulled out, I spotted that same red Chevy parked across the street at the gas station pumps. It was hard to miss. Mismatched door, crooked tailgate, dull red paint like dried blood. I told myself it was coincidence, just two strangers on a late-night run. But 3 blocks later, I checked my mirror. Headlights. Nothing strange about headlights, till I made a right turn onto Willow Street, and they turned too. My stomach tightened. I turned left, no signal, and those lights followed, matching every move. That's when the nerves kicked in. My hands started to sweat. I pressed the gas, weaving through the maze of quiet neighborhood streets, cutting corners, blowing through stop signs. Anything to lose them. After a few sharp turns, I darted up a long gravel driveway that led to an old barn with a for sale sign. I killed my lights and waited. The Chevy roared past without slowing. Only when its taillights faded into nothing did I exhale. I backed out slowly, heartbeat pounding in my ears. I drove home by a different route, slower this time, cautious, checking my mirrors every few seconds. When my porch light finally came into view, relief washed over me like a wave. I parked, locked the truck, and stepped into the still, humid air. The cicadas had gone quiet. That's when I noticed the shed light glowing in the backyard. The wooden door stood open. My first thought was my little brother. He sometimes borrowed tools for his truck and forgot to switch the light off. I sighed, crossed the yard, and reached for the pull string. The light went out, plunging everything into gray moonlight. Then, sound from the trees, a slow, deliberate crunch of leaves. Footsteps. I froze, every muscle screaming to run. The woods behind our yard were thick oaks and pines so dense you couldn't see more than a few feet in. The steps came closer. I locked the shed and backed away toward the house, heart pounding so hard it hurt. Inside, I double-checked every window and door, every latch, every bolt. Then, silence swallowed everything. The quiet didn't last. 3 hard bangs rattled the back door. I jumped. The curtain over the window trembled, the glass quivering in its frame. The porch bulb had burned out days ago, so I couldn't see who stood out there. Then came another round of pounding, harder this time, violent. I yelled, "I'm calling the police." The noise stopped instantly. And through that silence came a sound that turned my blood to ice, that same laugh I'd heard at the car wash. Raspy, playful, mocking. It lingered, then faded into the night. I waited with my phone clutched tight, fingers trembling until minutes bled into what felt like hours. Finally, I climbed upstairs. Told myself it was over. Told myself whoever it was had moved on. Sleep didn't come easy, but eventually, exhaustion won. Then, at 3 a.m., I woke up thirsty. The house was too quiet. I crept downstairs barefoot, every step creaking just enough to make me flinch. That's when I noticed it. The back door was open an inch. A cold draft slipped through. I froze mid-step, breath caught in my throat. Every instinct screamed to run, but my hand moved before my brain did, reaching for the door until I heard it. Something shifted in the living room. I peered around the doorway, barely breathing. In the dim orange glow from the street lamp outside, I saw him crouched behind the couch, shoulders rising and falling, each breath harsh and uneven. He was inside. I backed up slowly, one step at a time, heart hammering so hard I thought it would give me away. Upstairs, I locked myself in my room and dialed 911. My voice shook as I whispered to the dispatcher that someone was inside my house. While she stayed calm, I heard it, the soft creak of a floorboard just outside my door. Then that laugh again, closer. The handle jiggled, then pounding, violent, unhinged. He screamed through the woods, slurred threats, words twisted by rage and whatever poison ran through his veins. The dispatcher told me officers were close, that they'd come through the back because it was open. I could barely hear her over the noise. Then suddenly, silence. Boots thudded down the steps, then shouts, outs, male voices outside, commands shouted over the chaos. The red and blue glow of sirens bled through my curtains. Something metal clattered in the kitchen, a knife hitting tile. Minutes later, a knock at my door. Police. It's safe now. When I stepped out, my legs barely held me. 2 officers stood in the kitchen, handcuffing the man from the car wash. His forehead still streaked with dried blood, his eyes glassy and distant. On the floor lay a large kitchen knife, the blade glinting under fluorescent light. Mumbled nonsense, words slurred and broken. I couldn't look at him without shaking. They told me he'd been charged, breaking and entering, drug possession, intent to harm. I heard the words, but they didn't sink in. All I could think about was how close it had been. How easily one wrong choice could have changed everything. If I'd gone into the living room, if I hadn't locked the doors, if I hadn't called in time. Those small, meaningless decisions, they saved my life. Now, every night before bed, I check every lock, every light, every shadow. Because sometimes, the darkness doesn't leave when you turn the lights on. Would you dare return to that car wash after dark? My name's Damon, and what I'm about to tell you still chills me when I think of it. It's not my story exactly. It happened to someone I loved, but the memory feels stitched into my mind like a scar I never earned. Back in the early 2000s, my girlfriend Jenna told me about something that happened to her one quiet afternoon. She wasn't the type to exaggerate. Sweet, honest, almost painfully sincere. She couldn't lie even if she tried. That's why when she told me this story, I didn't doubt her for a second. It started like any other day. Jenna had decided to visit her aunt and cousin, Stacy. They lived together in a small, somewhat run-down apartment complex just outside town. 2 floors, identical units stacked like tired faces. Jenna went there all the time. She had a spare key and came and went as she pleased. That day, she parked out front in the dirt patch near the road. The building loomed over her, its chipped beige paint reflecting the afternoon sun, blinds twitching slightly in a stale breeze. She didn't see their car, but she didn't think twice. It wasn't unusual for her aunt and Stacy to be home without parking in front. She climbed the narrow staircase, the metal railing cold under her hand. The breezeway stretched out ahead of her concrete, lined with identical doors, and the air smelled faintly of laundry detergent and cigarette smoke. She walked 3 doors down, fished the key from her bag, and turned it in the lock. The door creaked open. Inside, the apartment felt dim and quiet, too quiet. "Hey guys, it's me," she called, stepping into the small living room. She moved toward the kitchen's small square, the peeling linoleum and a few dishes stacked beside the sink, empty. The air had that still. Muted heaviness, the kind that tells you a space hasn't been disturbed for hours. Stace, Aunt Marie. She tried again, walking down the short hallway toward the back. The first door on the right was her aunt's room. Empty. The bathroom light was off. But there, a faint glow leaked from under the door at the end of the hall. Stacy's room. Jenna frowned. The light was on, but she hadn't heard a sound since entering. She took a slow step forward, then another, the wooden floor creaking faintly under her sneakers. "Stace, it's Jen." Nothing. Her heart began to thud a little harder now, the way it does when your body senses something wrong before your mind catches up. The hallway smelled faintly of floral shampoo and dust. When she reached the open doorway, she hesitated. Inside, the air felt colder somehow, as if the light itself carried no warmth. Her cousin was there, or seemed to be. Stacy sat on the edge of her bed, back to the door, motionless. Shoulders rigid, head slightly bowed. Her brown hair looked the same, her clothes the same, but there was something off in the posture. Still too heavy, as if someone had placed a mannequin there. "Stace." Jenna's voice cracked a little. Still no response. She tried to laugh it off. Maybe Stacy was upset. Maybe she was zoning out. But unease pooled in her stomach like cold water. She took a hesitant step closer. Then, from the front door, she heard it. The muffled sound of keys jangling. The door opened. "Hey, we're back." Her aunt's voice called cheerfully from the living room, and beneath it, Stacy's voice. Bright, casual, unmistakably alive. Jenna froze mid-step. She turned her head toward the sound, the clatter of grocery bags, the laughter, the 2 voices overlapping. and then slowly. As if dragged by invisible strings, she turned back toward the bed. The figure on the mattress was still sitting there, but now it began to move. Its head turned, not the body, just the head, pivoting in a way no human neck could, like something adjusting itself inside a borrowed shell. The face that met Jenna's eyes was not Stacy's. Its skin was a dead gray slate, features sharp where they should have been soft. Hollow eyes like pits, catching the hallway light only to reflect Jenna's own face back at her, warped and faint, lipless mouth stretched into the ghost of a smile. Jenna's breath hitched, then the world collapsed into pure panic. She stumbled backwards, screaming, nearly tripping over herself as she bolted down the hall. Her aunt and cousin were in the kitchen, unpacking groceries. No, she's in there, Jenna cried, grabbing Stacy's arm. There's another you in your room, she's not right. The words tangled together, desperate, half incoherent. They followed her back toward the bedroom, her aunt clutching a rolling pin like a weapon. Jenna hesitated at the doorway, trembling. The room was empty. The bed was neatly made. The faint indentation on the mattress was the only trace of what she'd seen. Then, silence swallowed everything. Her aunt checked the closets. Stacy looked under the bed. They searched every corner, nothing. No back door, no open window, no possible escape. Just that light still humming faintly from the ceiling, flickering once before steadying again. Jenna, honey, maybe you imagined it, her aunt murmured softly. But Jenna couldn't speak. She was still staring at the mattress indentation as if the thing's weight lingered. That night she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that gray, lifeless face staring back. The next day she tried to convince herself it was a trick of light, exhaustion, imagination, but deep down she knew better. Over the next week, things only got stranger. She began to notice reflections that didn't line up in mirrors, windows, even dark screens. She'd turn her head and swear she saw herself already looking back. Once, while brushing her hair, her reflection smiled half a second late. She stopped visiting her aunt's apartment altogether. But one evening, about a month later, Stacy called her. Ow. Her voice trembled through the receiver. Jen, you said you saw someone that looked like me, right? Jenna froze. Yeah, why? Because I just saw you, Stacy whispered. You were standing in the hallway, but you didn't move when I called your name. Jenna's mouth went dry. She didn't go there. She hadn't left her own apartment all day. She hung up, heart hammering, staring at her locked door. Hours passed, every sound amplified. The fridge hum, the ticking clock, the occasional groan of old pipes. Then came a soft knock at her door. 3 slow taps. She stood up, barely breathing. Who is it? No answer. Another 3 knocks. Jenna took a shaky step closer, peering through the peephole. Her stomach dropped. Standing there, in the hallway light, was herself. Same clothes, same hair, but expression was wrong. The eyes flat, empty, the same gray tint. It smiled, slowly. Jenna stumbled backward. The doorknob rattled once, then stopped. Silence stretched, unbearable, suffocating. Then, faintly, she heard it whisper through the door. Her own voice, "Let me in." She didn't move. Couldn't? The whisper came again, quieter, pleading. "Please, I'm cold out here." Then came a low thud. Another, the sound of palms slapping wood. Harder now, faster, the voice distorted, growing guttural, urgent. "Let me in." Jenna screamed, backing away until she hit the wall. The pounding stopped. Nothing but her breathing filled the silence. Minutes crawled by. She finally gathered the courage to peek again. The hallway was empty. But later, when she turned off her lights and tried to sleep, she saw a movement outside her bedroom window. Faint, rhythmic, like someone pacing. She lived on the 3rd floor. She pulled the curtain aside, and there it was. That same gray face, pressed against the glass, upside down, staring in with her own expression twisted into something cold and hateful. The power went out. Darkness swallowed the room. She doesn't remember what happened next. She woke the next morning on her couch, trembling, phone dead, the apartment cold. Her reflection in the TV screen seemed to smile again before fading with the static. After that night, Jenna changed. She moved, cut her hair short, stopped talking about it. But sometimes, when I'd visit her years later, I'd catch her glancing toward dark windows, her expression tight, like she was expecting to see herself looking back. She never did, not fully. But once, when she took a photo on her phone, there were two faces reflected in the glass behind her, and one of them wasn't smiling. Would you dare open the door if your own voice asked to come in? The storm had come out of nowhere, though. Thinking back, maybe it had been watching us the whole time. We'd driven out to the lake that afternoon, my wife, my two kids, and I. A simple weekend trip meant to get her comfortable with camping. The air smelled of pine and warm dirt, and the water shimmered like glass under the afternoon sun. Nothing about that place warned us it could turn cruel. I'd bought a new family tent just for her, something big enough to stand in, bright blue and proud against the grass. We set it up near the tree line, a little apart from our friends who were still on their way. The kids ran toward the water, skipping stones. My wife smiled in that patient way she always did when she was trying to enjoy something she didn't trust yet. I remember thinking how peaceful she looked, how good it felt to have her there. The wind shifted just before dusk. Subtle at first, then harder, colder. The lake surface rippled, and the trees started whispering, not in gusts, but in uneven, jerking breaths, like the forest itself was shivering. I checked the weather radio, nothing. No warnings, just clear skies. Then I saw it, our brand new tent rolling across the water like a crumpled kite. For a second, I thought my eyes were lying. Then instinct kicked in. I tore off my shoes and dove straight into the freezing lake. Cold hit me like knives. I swam hard, grabbed the tie-down cord and dragged it back through the churning water. My breath ragged, the weight of the gear nearly pulling me under. When I reached the shore, the damage looked bad. Poles snapped, fabric torn open, everything soaked. My daughter's flashlight and one of our sleeping bags were gone completely, swallowed by the lake. We tried to laugh it off, to pretend it was just bad luck.
Ow.
Friends finally arrived, and the air lightened with their chatter. We built 2 big fires, draped our wet clothes nearby, and roasted hot dogs. Almost felt normal again. Almost. When night fell, we squeezed the kids into our friends' tents and retreated to our old station wagon. It was barely holding together, but at least it had a roof. We laid down an air mattress and tried to sleep under damp quilts. Wind rattled the car like a warning. Then the rain started, slow, tapping, curious. It turned to a hammering roar in seconds. Water pushed through the cracked window seals, dripping down my wife's face. She laughed once, shaky. Then lightning split the sky, and everything turned white. The flash burned through my eyelids. I grabbed the walkie-talkie. "You kids okay?" My son's voice came back, too loud. "Yeah, this is awesome." He was trying to sound brave. Then the pine tree fell. It sounded like a cannon. Bark and dirt rained down on the tents. The ground itself jumped under us. The kids screamed, their voices melting into static through the radio. I could barely breathe. The rain thickened, drumming like fists. The kids rushed to the cars, slipping through mud, faces flashing in the lightning. My wife's hand found mine cold, shaking. "This is camping," she whispered. "Never again." We pulled the kids inside, all 8 of us crammed into that rattling metal box. The rain howled, then suddenly, it stopped. Silence so deep it pressed against my eardrums. Then came the sound, low, rising, almost human. A wailing that rolled through the trees and over the lake. It wasn't the wind. It couldn't be. It carried a pattern, long, mournful notes that almost formed words. Lightning burst again, and that's when I saw it. A tall, thin figure stood between the trees, black as pitch, outlined only by the flash. No coat, no hat, just shape. It looked wrong, as if the storm had carved a human shadow out of the night and left it standing there. The light vanished. Darkness swallowed everything. My youngest whispered, "Dad, who's out there?" "I don't know," I said. I should have lied. Then, silence swallowed everything. The next flash came, quick, violent. The figure was still there. Same place, same stance. Not a step closer, not a twitch, just watching. My wife gripped my arm so tightly it hurt. Hail began, pelting the roof, sharp metallic bursts echoing through the car. Somewhere beyond the trees, something clanged, metal striking metal. Maybe it was the broken tent pole, maybe not. The wailing continued, a steady rise and fall that wormed its way into my skull. The kids sobbed quietly. Steam fogged the glass from our breaths. Outside, the lightning came again and again, each flash revealing that same unmoving silhouette. Like a fixed stain on reality, time lost meaning. Minutes felt like hours. At one point, I thought I saw it tilt its head, ever so slightly toward us. My stomach turned to ice. Then came the smell. Wet earth. And something electric, like ozone mixed with burnt hair. It filled the car as thunder rolled away into the distance. My wife buried her face in her hands. The wailing faded. The storm began to crawl away. One last flash, and the trees were empty. We waited. None of us spoke. Just rain dripping through cracks, tapping against the dashboard. When dawn came, it brought no comfort. The world outside looked drowned, the ground slick with mud, tents shredded, branches scattered. The air felt wrong, heavy, like the storm hadn't truly left. The car refused to start. We sat there for what felt like hours, our breaths fogging up the glass. Finally, I climbed out, shoes sinking into the muck. The pine that had been struck was split in two, black charred down its heart. I checked the ground. No footprints. Not even ours seemed right. They ended abruptly near the trees, swallowed by water and something darker beneath. My wife didn't speak while we packed up. The kids didn't ask questions. Nobody joked about the storm. We left as soon as a friend's SUV could pull us out. I kept looking into the rearview mirror, half expecting to see that thin figure still standing by the tree line, waiting. But the woods stayed still. Back home, she said one word. Home. Then she walked straight inside and didn't speak for the rest of the night. 2 months later, she agreed to camp again. She said nothing could ever top that night. We went to different lakes, different woods, always together, always careful. But no matter how calm the weather, I'd wake up sometimes to silence too deep, air to still. Like the storm was holding its breath somewhere nearby. We patched that torn tent by hand, every rip, every scar. Still stands in our garage, folded neat and clean, except for the stains along one side, the ones that never washed out. Rust-colored, shaped like a figure. Sometimes when the moonlight falls just right through the window, those stains seem to stretch taller, the outline bending, almost looking back. My wife swears it's dirt. I nod, but deep down I know better, 'cause sometimes when thunder rolls far away and the lights flicker for just a second, I hear it again that long. Mournful wail rising through the night air, calling across unseen water. And I still wonder if that thing by the trees ever left. Or if it's just waiting for the next storm to find me again. Would you dare camp near that lake? It was one of those nights when the air itself feels uneasy, cold enough to sting, but not enough to justify the way it crawls under your skin. I remember glancing at the clock above the register, 12:57 a.m., the kind of hour where time seems to dissolve. The hum of the refrigerators filled the silence, that low, constant drone that sometimes made me feel like the store was alive, breathing quietly in the dark. Music, low ambient hum, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering faintly. And I could smell the faint sweetness of spilled soda that had soaked into the mop from my last cleanup. It was just another overnight shift outside Asheville, North Carolina. The store sat alone, hugging the highway at the edge of town. During the day, it felt ordinary: coffee cups, clinking, laughter, and people coming in and out. But after midnight, it turned into something else entirely. The aisles looked too long, shadows stretched too far. Every reflection in the convex mirrors seemed slightly delayed, as if the store saw things a second after I did. Around 1 a.m., 2 teenagers came in laughing, grabbing chips, energy drinks, teasing each other. Their noise felt like a relief, a reminder that I wasn't the only living soul awake. But when they left, silence rushed back in. Heavier than before. I remember sweeping the same stretch of floor over and over, pretending I had something to do. Then at 2:30 I saw the headlights. They came slowly, too slowly down the empty road, cutting through the dark like knives. A rusted pickup truck rolled into the farthest corner of the lot, engine idling, exhaust curling in the cold air. The driver didn't move. From the register, all I could see was a faint silhouette, someone hunched forward, hands gripping the steering wheel. At first I tried to ignore it. I kept wiping down the counter, glancing up every few seconds. But as the minutes dragged on, and the truck remained still, something inside me began to tighten, a quiet alarm. The glass reflected a faint shimmer of my own anxious face as I finally heard the truck door creak open. The man who stepped out moved in a way that didn't feel right. Every step was deliberate, slow, like he was counting them. His coat was brown, worn, shoulders stiff beneath it. A baseball cap pulled low enough to hide most of his face. When he reached the door, I forced a polite evening, hoping my voice didn't tremble. He didn't answer. Not a word. Just walked past me, the bell above the door giving a soft ding that seemed to echo too long. I watched through the angled mirrors as he paced each aisle. He wasn't shopping, just drifting, sometimes stopping to stare at something for several seconds, like he'd forgotten what it was. Eventually, he picked up a single can of soda. When he brought it to the counter, I finally saw his face. Pale skin, deep eye sockets, lips cracked and colorless. But what froze me was his expression, or rather the absence of one. His eyes were empty, like glass marbles catching the fluorescent light. He handed me a crumpled dollar without speaking. I gave him his change, our fingers brushing for the briefest second. His skin was ice cold. Then he left. I exhaled, realizing I'd been holding my breath. Through the window, I saw him leaning against his truck, slowly sipping the soda, just watching the store. Minutes passed, he didn't leave. He just stood there, staring. I could feel his gaze even when I wasn't looking directly at him. Every instinct told me to lock the doors, but store policy forbade it. So I stood there, pretending to be calm as the man finally climbed back into the truck. The headlights flickered, and he drove off down the dark road, his taillights vanishing like red eyes swallowed by the night. For a while, I convinced myself it was nothing. Just another strange customer. The quiet returned. I restocked the coffee station, forced to smile at my own reflection in the cooler glass. But 20 minutes later, the same headlights appeared, this time closer. The truck pulled in again, its engine louder, headlights flooding the front window with harsh white light. My stomach turned. My hand shook as I reached for the store phone, gripping it tightly. The door slammed open.
Pass.
The man stepped in fast, too fast, his eyes locked directly on mine. He walked straight to the counter, breathing unevenly. His voice, when it came, was a rasp, barely more than a whisper. "Were you here yesterday?" I froze. "Yeah," I said hesitantly. He stared, trembling slightly. "Did someone come in here asking about me?" His tone was desperate, not angry but frightened. I tried to remember anyone unusual from the night before. No one came to mind. "No," I said softly. No one did. He just stood there, unmoving, eyes twitching like he was trying to read something behind me. Then he turned abruptly and rushed back out to his truck. The tires screeched, and he was gone. Then, silence swallowed everything.